Well, good morning again, or afternoon, or evening, whenever it is you're watching or listening to this. So we're looking through and thinking through some thoughts in Colossians, specifically starting in 1:15. And we talked in the last one just about the Jesus being the visible image of the invisible God. And the second part of 15 gets into some harder to understand waters. And it describes Jesus as the firstborn over all creation. And it's typically that word firstborn that causes the majority of the issues and problems with understanding this concept of who Jesus is, that he is supreme over all things. And you can easily look at it, and the word there in the Greek is used to describe the firstborn, actually literally firstborn child. And the problem with this arises when you get into some heresies, and speaking of mainly the heresy of Arianism, where they would say that firstborn, meaning that Jesus had not existed before that point where he was born, so he is the first one there. And that doesn't fly with the rest of Scripture, being that Jesus has always been eternal, always has been, always will be. And so you have this issue of, well, what does this mean? And again, Greek translated English doesn't always fit perfectly good, and the concept of how words are used do not always fit well with how we think today. But really, this firstborn statement is referring to rank, his preeminence, his, again, superiority over all things. He is over all things. He is above all things. He is before all things, for he is part of the creation process himself. So this firstborn just carries that line. You can even look at it as within the Davidic kingdom line, that Jesus is the firstborn of the Davidic line, as in it's always been him. He's always been the Messiah, the one that is coming to save us. And so keep in mind, there's a lot bigger discussion to have with just that word in and of itself, but which we are not going to address here currently. And it's, to be honest, a lot of it is over the scope of my understanding of how language is even used. But this firstborn over all creation, it's really pointing to the fact that Jesus is above all, and he has authority, and creation is his, and it was made for him. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we willing to submit ourselves to that and then start to live our lives in submission to the King, in submission to the one who is over all creation, in submission to anything other than ourselves, to be honest with you. We are quite often kings in our own little kingdom. So how do we approach Jesus now? How do we approach our faith now with the humility to not seek after our own desires, and to read his word in a way that we don't put ourselves or our own thoughts or our own desires before the ways of God, which are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So just a lot to think about there, of Jesus being the visible image of the invisible God, and that he is supreme over all things. So I hope that stirs some thoughts and questions and drives you to dig deeper into the word yourselves. Have a fantastic day. Take care.